everyone. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Kate Garza. I'm the Vice President of the Hudson School District. And today we have our consulting group, MGT, presenting on our boundaries and, oh, that's okay. So this is Lance, and he'll introduce his team and then how the rest of the night is gonna be laid out.
So thank you. Just real quick, how many of you are repeat customers from our last session? Okay. Just a note as we go through the presentation, because some of it is a repeat, so some of this information that I presented last time, I'm probably going to go through it in a little faster clip because we actually have additional information with the additional polling, so I want to honor your time and your commitment to being out here in the cold. So again, I appreciate the intro. My name is Dr. Lance Richards. I am from Southern Indiana. I'm a former school superintendent. Any elementary principals, any elementary teachers in the room? Best job ever. And went on to become central office, transportation superintendent, all that stuff. For the past 3 years, I've been working with MGT, and we quite literally travel the nation talking about schools and trying to help schools make informed decisions and work through some challenges. So we'll kind of get started here. Ooh, wrong button. All right, so our team, joining me don't stand in front of the screen. Joining me tonight is Danny Dominguez and Maya Rayo. They're with me tonight, and we'll be here afterwards. So if you have any questions or specific information you'd like to go through with us, please come and find us. We're happy to kind of talk through the process and things. I'll try to share and answer most of those questions as we go through this, and I'll try to also address some questions that were brought up to us in the last session that I can kind of filter into the information as well. This presentation tonight is being recorded and will be shared on your local cable access tomorrow. The PowerPoint will also be posted on your school's website if it's not already there. The polling that we're going to do will also be posted and sent out and distributed, much like we did in the last session, following the last session. So any of this info, I encourage you just to kind of watch and kind of absorb, because all this information will be available to you later. The one, Lauren Woods is not with us, our fearless leader, and he would not be ashamed of me letting you know he had a hip replacement today, and he's doing very well, and so that kept him from being here. So what's that? Yeah, well, he knows. So, all right, so let's get started. So MGT is a company, as I shared before, that works across the nation. We've also been in Canada. I've also worked overseas in Qatar at some point. And this is what we're built for. This is the work that we do. We are school people trying our best to help school people and school communities make informed decisions. Pop forward there. And these are a few of the districts we've worked with in and around. I know we're also in, we got Madison. We've been in Milwaukee as well. And then a brief agenda. We're going to talk about methodology, work through how our forecast factors work, share the boundary inputs, and then we're going to share community input from the last time, share the revised boundary scenario that we've come up with based on that feedback, and then again gather some additional insights through that polling. So as a part of tonight, for the polling, this will be up now. This is Poll EV. For those of you that participated the last time, you can scan the QR code and they'll take you to the first question. You'll be stuck at the first question, though. You can't advance on your own. You can also go to the website, pollev.com/MGT3, or you can text MGT3 to the number 22333. And Danny will have this up for you here in just a moment. You can also, if you don't want to participate tonight in the polling, because the poll that we'll be sharing with the community will be the same polling information, gathering the same insights, you can hold off and then participate at a later time if you'd like, if you'd rather see all the questions first. So overall approach. Some key takeaways from this, for those of you that saw this the last go around, we're here to promote transparency. All the information that the school board is using as a part of their assessment, as a part of their information gathering, is the information that we're going to share with you tonight so that you can see and understand and help process that information as well. No decisions have been made. No final decisions have been made in regard to these boundaries. And so as you look your way through this, where are we now? What do we know? Our data going back and forth with the district around school enrollment and historical enrollments and all those things, working with county leadership and state around development and around your birth rates and those kinds of things. Where do we want to be in terms of the models? You were part of this group, this collective group in session 1 was a part of that model review process with us. We're having this additional step of model review as a part of our community feedback before we come back and share final recommendations at a later time. We're here to educate and activate the members of your community. We're hoping that you'll walk away with that elevator speech that you can kind of share in your community, have this conversation around this. I know it's a big deal. We're dealing with your children. We're dealing with kind of the shifting boundaries of schools. And when you get into these things, many times your heart and your emotions can kind of weigh in on some of that decision making and thinking. And so it's important that you share this information, good, bad, or otherwise, with your community so everyone has an opportunity to weigh in. Everyone's insights are appreciated. And so we can create that informed decision makers. So spatial data. So we took a look at your historic enrollment, and we broke it out into these study areas. And we have 241 different study areas of students, breaking them down into kind of ranges of 25 to 50, depending on density of population. So when you get into the city core, you can see the box is smaller. The density of population is tighter, and so you can draw a smaller box to capture that 25 to 50, whereas you got to get out into the more rural parts, and it's a much larger block in order to capture that same number of students. And so we work off of the elementary boundaries, busting them out into these study areas, and then as you can see the historic analysis here in the bottom right-hand side. We'll talk more about this in some other slides coming up. Student density, so this is basically where the kids are, where the students are in relation to the district as a whole in terms of intensity. And so obviously, much like a summer storm, the yellow is more intense than the red and so forth. Historic student analysis. So the key takeaway here, folks, is as we look back, we're going back 4 years. So 22, I can't use my hand for that, 22, 23, 24, 25. And we're bringing that information forward, looking back. So we're looking back so that we can begin to look forward. And as you look at this information, you can there's a general trend line. Minus 23, minus 1, 27, 63, all the way down through here, what we're seeing is a significant decline as we kind of roll forward in that time. Similarly, across the board, what you can kind of see, it kind of waves through. So as the elementaries wave through, that works almost like a wave coming through the secondary schools, through your middle schools and high schools. And we've got a chart later that'll kind of profile that even more exactly. So as you come forward, this is where we were collectively school-wide in 2022. This is where we are at this point, a decline of roughly 400 or so students across that time frame. So in taking a look at this is the utilization information we shared the last go-round. And the key takeaway on this is that the elementaries are operating overall at about a 66% utilization. So you're managing present day right now, you're managing at about 1,000 empty seats at the K-5 level, okay? So if you're looking across this, and this represents, a pretty significant underutilization, especially when you look at your school sizes in relation to that 1,000. So as there's a couple of key things here. We work off resident enrollment, residents in terms of where the students that actually live within the district. We do have open enrollment transfers and that kind of things, but for our forecasting and things, we're working off resident enrollment. So forecast factors. And this is how we bake the cake. It's almost like a three-legged stool as well in terms of supporting the forecasting. So as you look at this, we're working off birth factors, we're working off mobility, and we're working off student yield. So what are those things? Birth factors are quite simply your birth rate. Thank you. Birth rate, and we'll share one of those numbers in just a second. Mobility is that those students in and out across a grade band. So the number of kids, if you're a teacher in your classroom, and the number of kids that may ebb and flow in and out of your class in a given year. And same for the building, same for the district. So do they grow or do you shrink across that time? And part of the analysis around that mobility deals with, kind of comes around to those student yield factors and the turnover of homes in a community where people age out and younger folks are able to move into your community and join you. And it can be reflected in the mobility factor. And then student yield factors are your residential development. You have some multifamily a little bit down the road here, but by and large, and by plan, you are single-family homes in this district. The good news is single-family homes are usually the bigger generator of students. You get fewer students per 100 in apartments. In fact, your multifamilies are, we'll share this in just a minute, but you don't have really enough multifamily projects within your school community to make a huge difference or impact in your district. You just don't have a large number of them. So in looking at this, these are kind of the components that come down. Birth factors lead to kindergarten classes. Mobility factors look across all the grades, whether they grow or shrink. And student yield looks at residential development. All of that comes down into the student forecast. So as we look at this, this is the first part of that. We talk about birth rates. And the key takeaway on this slide is as we went back and we came forward, so birth rates have been in decline coming out of the recession and then falling below 300 total births in 2020 and continuing through 2022. Not a dramatic dip, but a dip nonetheless. And quite honestly, we're seeing this nationally. Just overall decline of birth rates. Smaller families, delayed families, many folks choosing not to have children at all in terms of families. And nationally, we're seeing, especially around smaller and delayed families. So your birth rates are in decline, and so that leads to what's going to show up in kindergarten. And we'll show some numbers on that in just a second. Now this is your mobility factors, and you're working off of a 1. So if 1-to-1, that means if you had 100 kids in first grade, and your factor was 101, then next year in second grade you had 101. And if it was 0.98, then the next year you had 98. And as you see in this chart, the student mobility ratio indicates really no growth in existing neighborhoods. High school ratios do show a slight gain. And really, if you look at especially 11 to 12, you're kind of going, well, why is that all blue? That's all blue because your fifth-year senior gets to come back into their cohort. So that shows the efforts of the district to get kids to graduate. And then at year 8 and 9, those are kids that are returning from the parochial schools or other schools in your district. So as those folks return to the high school. So we worked with a district on the East Coast where all these numbers were in blue because they just continued to grow and they had a much larger district, different planned in terms of residential development, different turnover ratios on their homes because what we saw was growth across the grade bands. Because they did not have it, in that district, they still had declining birth rates, but they were gaining through mobility because of housing, available housing stock. Residential development. So we went out, actually, Maya and our friend Lauren from the earlier picture went out and drove the entire county and looked at every development and looked at where they were located, whether or not, you can have a plan for 100 homes. But if you don't have infrastructure in place, if you don't have footers in the ground, those kinds of plays, they don't factor into year one. They may factor into the future forecast, but they're not going to be there at year one. And so they drove it, and you can see we've got a little bit of an apartment here at the Bella Rose, here at the core of phase 2 of that. So most of the apartments that you see here are already online. So they're already factored into your overall forecast. So basically 665 new housing units are to be built in the next 10 years. And the majority of them are the are actively planned, those single-family detached, the single-family homes, the kind of the traditional home of families, to be honest with you, starter families especially. You have about 200 multi-unit or townhomes that are planned to come online in that same time frame. And so, in looking at this, we went back to all of those developments, counted the number of students that are being generated out of those developments, and came up with basically a yield factor of 0.330. So this means that for every 100 new homes, you're going to get about 33 new students. So a key takeaway also on this is that this is one of those things you got to have to kind of revisit every year or two because you don't know what's going to come online. Things can change in terms of planning and zoning and the types of housing that could come into play. Those types of things can impact your residential development. But to be honest with you, you don't have enough residential development. You don't have enough mobility, inflow through mobility to offset the declining birth rates. So district forecast. And this is the one I was talking about would kind of show you and quantify the problem for you, the challenges for you a little better. So basically, the pink are lower numbers. This is just a gradient to kind of give you an idea of mathematically low to high, okay? And so let me give you Demography 101. The simplest thing to do is look at the number of high school students that graduate, come out of 12th grade, and then look at the number of kindergarten students coming in to the school the next year. So in every one of these categories going across the board into this, as we look across into 2035, I mean, let's go back to 2022. You graduated 469, you brought in 354. Graduated 441, brought in 327. So to be honest with you, this in a nutshell is the challenge for the district in terms of enrollment, because you don't have enough through development and you don't have enough existing turnover in your housing stock to offset the way that kind of waterfalls across. And you can see as the numbers work the way across, your largest numbers are in the historic and your smaller numbers ride out into the forecasted numbers. And you can kind of follow the gradient across your current, for example, your current, based on all the forecasting things, your current K at 291 up here, you can just kind of see where it's forecasted to, it's kind of a push. It's kind of holding on as it goes down through and those kids returning in the high school there. And so, and then you can come across the bottom here, resident student totals by grade configuration. You got a 52 here, and as this trends on the way across, not dramatic, but at that same point in 2035, you're going to have about 4179. Now, can I promise you that exact number is going to be 4179? No. But what I can tell you is that based on our modeling, based on all the work that we've done nationally, and some to a lesser extent internationally, I can tell you that you've got it, as you've seen from all the numbers, you've got a slow trend downward across. Now, it's not all negative, as you'll see here in the forecast in just a second. So as you take a look at these numbers, you can just kind of see the resident forecasted students, but what you can see as you get into the 30s, the 2030 and after, you're going to have this plateauing. You're going to have a leveling off in terms of your student enrollment. You're going to reach kind of that equilibrium where your high school graduates are kind of equal up with the kindergartners. But you can tell it's a 10 to 12 year process to have that group that kindergarten group kind of work its way through. And you can see the differing bands. The elementaries plateau earlier, as you would suspect, and then it's got to work its way through the middle, work its way through the high. So there were a lot of questions last time around development. Are you doing the development? Are you factoring the development? What about the development? What about the development? Well, in this particular case, what you can see is the light blue line is a trend line if no development, future development, is factored in to the modeling. The dark line, the black line, is with development. So you just kind of follow that trend, historic and current student counts, and bring that blend out. No new bills over the next decade would anticipate a loss of students, an additional 4.25% in terms of loss. So again, as you kind of take a look at these, I have this chart up to kind of look so you can see the 5 and 10-year change across that same, if you kept all the buildings open, where they would be and how things would work out across time. And so you can see the 5-year change here. Let's just come down to North Hudson, 16.6, and then across the 10-year change, 17.7. So there's a lot of numbers here because we're looking at forecasted students kind of coming across, how they would trend. Again, the elementaries kind of plateau earlier, and then you come down to the middles, and they kind of come into that number as they trend across that same time frame. This next chart actually is a better representation of that. So some growth at Rivercrest in that, but you can see especially around North Hudson and some of the other areas, based on those study areas, based on looking at all the component parts, you can see what our forecast based on future student population. So, key takeaway here. District student counts are projected to continue a decline, stabilizing at about 3,900 students by the year 2035. You know, in that spot, a little under 4,000. K-5 student forecast will decline initially and eventually stabilize at around 1,750 at around 2030. Again, elementary is going to come into the stabilization earlier. Grade 6 through 8 middle school will have an expected decline as smaller elementary cohorts work their way through, falling to less than 900 students by around 2030. And similarly with the high school, that's going to come in a little later, and they're going to end up at around 1,400 students in the year 2032. So back to those study areas. So now we're looking at students' projected net change going forward. We had the one was historic looking back. This one is a net change going forward in projections. And so this is the, you got to pay attention to the orange and the red. An increase in orange and red indicates additional declines. So as you can see on the chart, there's quite a bit of orange there in terms of the overall charting in terms of the current study areas. A little bit of growth here. There's a decrease in the overall number of light and dark greens where newer housing is stock and family-oriented turnover contribute to modest student increases. So in the overall chart, you can you can kind of just take, we've got a chart here. Again, this will all be online for your review. But the key takeaway is the pattern reflects a shift in the enrollment landscape with localized dips and gains. Again, not dramatic, but you've all seen that trend line, you know. This supports the district-wide forecast of enrollment decline over the next 5 years. And there's an important caveat here because the district had done their own work. I believe it was done through one of the universities, and they came through and they did an analysis. And the initial analysis, the initial enrollment information was provided by that group to the board prior to our arrival. We didn't have anything to do with that forecast. And what we were charged with by the board is to do our own analysis, independent of that work. And so this work, independent of what had been done prior, supports the initial findings. And so as you look at this information, what you can see is, again, just a general enrollment decline over the next 5 years. So key takeaways. Overall enrollment decline, they're going to expect to lose about 600 students over the decade, about a 12% decrease. Our methodology, some questions around last time around methodology. Ours is a land use. How is the ground being used? Is it a house? Is it a Walmart? Is it a convenience? Whatever it is, we're looking at land use and looking at with that historic data, birth rates, mobility, and such. Again, in the developments across the 241 study areas that we did in breaking out the student into the study areas. So your primary driver, again, is this falling birth rates. And you just don't have enough development and enough turnover existing housing stock to offset that declining enrollment at the kindergarten level. New housing impact is minimal. It's helpful. We want it. It's important that you have this ability to bring young families into your communities. But it's not enough. The steepest declines will be in the secondary schools as we move through into that 2032 in terms of that. Again, bringing the elementaries through the middle and high. Elementaries will stabilize earlier at about 1750, and you have an immediate challenge of the fact that you had approximately 1,000 empty elementary seats representing about a 66% utilization rate at the K-5 level. So again, the imperative was to take a look at this and begin utilization, analyze the utilization, and begin right-sizing facilities and adjusting those attendance boundaries from an operations standpoint. So boundary considerations. When we look at boundaries, we look at guiding principles. We look at the factors that you have to play into, and we worked through these the last time a little more in depth, but you've got transportation. You want to try to minimize the fewest number of students. You got to honor natural barriers and roads. You got a lake over here. You got to kind of take a look at how that plays in. You've got interstates. And some of our comments that we got in our poll from 2 weeks ago kind of leaned into those major roads and things. You don't want an island zone. We've got districts where they just pluck up this cluster of students and take them across the district and pluck them down somewhere else just to balance utilization, and that's not good for anyone. And you don't have that really now, so why bring it into this? Neighborhood considerations, neighborhood cohesion, trying to make sure that subdivisions, that you have a logical barrier, especially you don't go down the middle of a subdivision in the middle of the street facing houses. You may have to go down the fence row in the back, maybe where the power lines are run through or there's a sewer easement or whatever, but you do your best to make sure that your neighborhoods stay together, your subdivisions stay together. And then again, we're here to talk about capacity and utilization. And what you really want is to make sure that, and this was a conversation we've had with a number of folks after our last session, you want to make sure that whatever fix you put in, that it's a 5 to 10 or 10 to 15 year fix. You do not want to be having this conversation again. You don't want to be in a situation where families have to think about where their kids are going to school. You want that stability of knowing. To be honest with you, many times a lot of folks come to these meetings because they want the stability of knowing. All right, where's it going to happen? How's it going to work? And we do have we're going to have, I believe, a QR code here in a little bit. Also, there's a map that you can drill into, interactive map, that you can see where your house would fall into the different scenarios. But for those of you that ever played Lotto or Powerball, and they have to do the ball, and they have the ping pong balls that bounce around in the bin, and they pull, these guiding principles work against each other. Because you're going to see some of these, and you're going to go, well, I don't get, they split that neighborhood weird. Well, that may be in trying to balance transportation. Or sometimes it gets wonky because you don't have enough capacity to fill the building, or you have too much capacity, or in this case, you've got too many fifth graders over here, and we're trying to balance the sections to make sure that everything's kind of equal as best you can. You've got some clear parameters in your district around busing routes and not having them be too long. And you also just want to make sure that the schools are kind of balanced from an economic standpoint and making sure you've got a balance of students, again, across the grades, all those striations. So these, I think it's important to note that the guiding principles, the board worked on these very hard, but they pull and they just absolutely sometimes work against one another. So existing boundaries. And so you can see based on the color coding here, your existing boundaries. I think most people are pretty much familiar with how it all breaks down. We have the kind of the pull out of the downtown area here. And so here are your and we'll showcase the existing boundaries in the other scenarios. So these are the ones that I believe most of you are familiar with from our last go-round. Hopefully you visited the website and participated in our last poll. So we had the blue, the green, and the purple scenarios. And when we get into these individually, well, the roads are a little more delineated this time so you can see those a little bit better. And these are the ones that folks rank ordered the last time. So as you look at this, this was the green scenario. Holton was split geographically. Willow River split into areas roughly within the city of Hudson and zoned to rock. And River Crest takes all the area south of County Road. And we'll have specific charts to these numbers again in just a moment, so I want to get to those. But the estimated impacted students here are 191 for Holton, 240 from Willow, and then other schools, because in order to balance this is a domino effect. So as you bring kids down out of Holton into North Hudson, you've got to kind of create space as you move, because some of those kids from Willow River might move up as well as you move over toward Hudson and into Rock. So there's a balance there, and we're going to have those specific numbers for you in just a second as well. So this was the green scenario, and you can kind of see what its footprint is. And then here are those same numbers that I talked about just a second ago. So you've got the new school of residence, and you've got this current school of residence. So you can see where the Holton kids are going to be split here at 65 and 126. Hudson Prairie is going to move 58 kids over to River Crest, and then as you come down North Hudson, that fixes, I believe it's this little, where's the lake? There's a little blurb right here on the other side of the lake. That's the North Hudson 9. We'll call that the North Hudson 9 to make a little more cohesion in that boundary. Rock has to move 57 over to Rivercrest, and then Willow Rivers, the majority of them end up at Rock, with 82 at Hudson Prairie in this scenario. This was the purple scenario, and we're going to share the polling results of these in just a moment. 191 again from Holton, 240 from Willow, but 107 in this one from other schools. Again, in this case, Holton is split between North Hudson, Hudson Prairie along the county road, with most of the students now attending Hudson Prairie. Willow River in this particular scenario gets split into 3 different schools, and kind of you can see that that also delineates the boundary kind of runs through the town in that regard. And then Rivercrest takes in all areas south of I-94 that are currently zoned to Hudson Prairie to balance out those zones in the utilization. And in this particular one, again, you can see that the flip on the Holton numbers of 106 and 85. Hudson Prairie at this point now is pushing out 107. That's the 107 that are going to Rivercrest. And as you come down, Willow River split a little differently now. Hudson Prairie at 88, North Hudson 30, and then Rock Elementary at 122. And again, we'll have a cohesive slide here in a minute for comparative purposes of all these scenarios. And here's your blue scenario. This one balances the areas of growth across more attendance areas, kind of looking a little more forward looking. Holton and Willow River are split and similar to the green with a couple of minor differences, but Rivercrest in this one takes in areas south of 94, and you can see the roads there. Hudson Prairie retains more of the rural areas around the southeast corner, and then 191, 240, and then but in this one, your impact is 177 students from other schools. And in your blue boundary, again, you can the Holton numbers reverse. And Willow River, 82 to Hudson Prairie, 158 to Rock. But a little bit of difference there on Hudson Prairie in terms of 48 to Rivercrest and 37 to Rock in this one. And then Rock is sending 92 to Rivercrest. And again, I'll have comparative slides here in just in a moment. So we're going to have the comparative slides when we introduce the additional scenario that was brought forth as a result of the polling. And so I'm going to go through this very quickly, and we'll get to that other one. So in person, we had 28 participants in the slide. In our last session, more than half had students attending Willow River or Holton in that. Scenario, in their preferences were there listed to the right. Most common concerns out of the 28 there were transportation, the multiple splits, and increased class sizes. In our overall larger poll, the one that was sent out via the community, we had 276 responses, the majority of them being parents, and you can kind of see the split down here of employees in terms of responses, but a good number of balance across that aspect of it. If you have a child that attends, these are the Hudson Prairie folks who are weighing in on this one, Willow River, and Hudson Middle School as well. EP Rock up there at the top at 45. So we had 235 responses in terms of this information. So when you're looking at priorities, and you'll get a chance to weigh on this in just a moment, folks were very concerned around transportation and impact, but you also had, capacity and utilization. And kind of that, I believe the thinking around that is if you're going to do this, make it right. If you're concerned about class sizes and those kinds of things. And then natural barriers at 44, the island zones were there at 9. So critical issues that kind of came out of the overall surveying. Talk about minimizing student impact, concerns about class size, neighborhoods and communities cohesion, transportation time, and then I think a big one here is stability and long-term sustainability. They don't want another major adjustment in just a few years. If you're going to fix it the first time so that we're not having this conversation again down the road in a few years. So after seeing all of this, out of the total responses of 231, purple was at 90, green 56, and blue at 85. So again, folks didn't have to respond to this, but which is the best new boundary option? Was purple in this case. Which should be eliminated from consideration? In this case, blue was considered the one that should, by rank, was the one that should be eliminated. A green kind of, and all of these, green just kind of was number 2. It just kind of came in second place across the board. So if you take this and if you do the ranking and the overall takeaway from this, what you can see in terms of most preferred, the number 1 ranking was purple. Number 2 was green, as we shared, and then the least preferred was blue out of the overall ranking. So purple kind of led the way over in an overall. So this was the sentiment surrounding the blue scenario in terms of themes: too much movement, split some neighborhoods, some illogical boundaries, concerns around transportation. If you kind of go over to the overall community sentiment, concerns in the polling, this one had the greatest disruption and split the most neighborhoods, and concerns around transportation inefficiencies and class size. Concerns around the green, they thought it was cleaner than the blue, and more harmful in other ways with neighborhood fragmentation. Again, transportation. Green broke up more neighborhoods. Boundaries were a little bit confusing to folks that responded. And so, again, significant disruption and capacity concerns. In this particular one, some concerns around equity and socioeconomic balance also came up. And then purple overall comments or sentiments based on purple. A lot of folks either supported or had no concern around purple, gave it a little more. They had some, they felt like it was a little more aligned to major roads. The big concern that came out of purple was obviously the fracturing of Willow River into 3 component parts and the splitting of downtown, taking that and just kind of splitting the middle. Again, concerns around class size, transportation size, and concerns around routing, and then moving kids from certain neighborhoods in terms of school closures, especially those who moved into who may have moved in a prior boundary change several years ago. Purple drew the strongest best option support, but also had a specific set of objections around splitting the downtown and splitting Willow River across multiple schools, and concerns about class size and routing. Purple is viewed by many as the most logical, but the downtown split was the most consistent point of resistance. So as a result of that, we took that information and brought forward then kind of a revision of purple that folded in some other areas, and this was the orange scenario. And you can kind of see green is Hudson Prairie, the orange is North Hudson, the beige look kind of gray up there is Rivercrest, and then the pink is Rock in terms of that. So in this one, it's a response to the community feedback. It preserved the clear boundaries of purple while keeping neighborhoods like downtown Hudson together. Hudson Elementary in this one is split just like green in the last scenario of the 191. Willow River is split in such that all areas in the town of Hudson and areas in the city of Hudson east of downtown will be zoned to Hudson Prairie, while downtown Hudson would be zoned to Rock. And Rivercrest takes in all of the areas. There was a conversation around the areas south of 994, bringing that into Rivercrest. Again, that was identical to the purple scenario. In this one, we got 191 and 240, but in this case, it does impact 116 students from other schools. So this kind of gets a little more granular, so you can kind of see the neighborhoods and the dividing lines here with Rivercrest Elementary and what it's taking in versus what it had prior in terms of the blue line is the prior school boundary, and then the beige or gray is the new school boundary in this scenario. And then you can kind of see where it plays out down here at the bottom. Rock with the proposed boundary, kind of getting a little more granular on the streets. And again, we'll have a tool for you to kind of zoom in on the neighborhoods and zoom in on your maps from your phone or computer so you can get a better estimate if you're on this boundary line. Again, the dark blue line represents what had been the boundary. And in this case, you can see where Rock's proposed boundaries would fall in the orange scenario. And it kind of hangs, and then you can see that, again, this one bumps up against Rivercrest at the bottom. Hudson Prairie in this proposed boundary, and you can see, again, the dark blue of the prior boundary of Holton, and then where the green and the orange here, or peach, weigh in terms of boundaries in the orange scenario. And where it kind of breaks down into the bottom here as well. And again, this PowerPoint will be available so you can kind of drill into it. And here's a North Huston's proposed boundary in the orange scenario. Orange scenario. And then it breaks down into downtown. So, similarly, when you're looking at this boundary option, and again, we'll have this in a side-by-side comparison with the other three in just a moment, but as you can see, Holton busts out to Hudson Prairie and then over to North Hudson. As you come across there, Hudson Prairie takes, again, 107 to Rivercrest. As you come down, though, you got fewer impact students there. Willow River now, in this scenario, goes two places instead of three, 122 to Hudson Prairie, and more of almost a 50-50 split on the building with 118 going over to Rock. So as you look at the total number of impacted students, you got 197, 126, 107, 118. And as I shared before, here we go. So here's those, if you're looking across the board in terms of your grand total, in terms of number of students in, out, or shifted, blue impacted the most with a grand total of 607. Green was at 555. Purple less at 538. And then orange at 547. About, look, what's that at? 9 kids more than purple. So again, orange was the result of us taking that feedback, looking at what was going on with downtown, looking at some of the road barriers and additional neighborhoods, and bringing those in to the and fixing that slight boundary there at North Hudson that was actually present in the green one as well. So again, side by side of the 4 estimated student impact. So then, if you're looking at these numbers, so these are your capacity and utilizations as you're going forward to the 26, the 2030, and the 2035 school year. And your superintendent has, if you were here in the last meeting, he had some numbers for you. Do you want to maybe explain? Here, I'll trade you.
Absolutely. So what you have is a little different document from what you had last time. So it has all 4 scenarios because people ask, what does it do to class sizes, number of sections, and things along those lines. So on one page, on one side, it's called limited sections. You see it at the top, and I think we're getting them handed out. Maria's got them coming this way. On the side that says limited sections, this is how we would traditionally staff buildings based on our parameters and things like that. We would have, sometimes at this point in the year, we would have some sections that would be over our class size guidelines. Currently, as we sit right now, we have 3 in the school district for the 25-26 school years. There's 3 different grades in buildings that have more kids than our class size guideline. And so this option limited, just basically, it ends up with about 2 grades over class size guidelines. So what also was asked was, well, what would it look like if we made sure that no grades were over class size guidelines? Could we still fit into the buildings? That's where you can turn it over, and on the other side, it is adding essentially the 2 additional sections to make sure that every setup is not over the class size guidelines. And, you know, when people ask the question, how does this, for budgeting and things, we budgeted about 86 sections is about when we were originally talking about building closures and what we thought the savings would be. It was based on about 86 sections. So one could argue that if you go with 87 sections or 88, you wouldn't save quite as much as you would if you went with 86, obviously. But again, it is a one-year issue, because one of the biggest things that happens is when we add those 2 sections to the yellows almost across the board, is that large class of Hudson Prairie, 5th grade, moves on to the middle school after 1 year. So that's a reduction of that section. And then 2nd grade into 3rd grade at North Hudson, instead of going 4 sections, it drop down into 3 in 3rd grade, because it'd be well within the class size guidelines at that point. And so it would be kind of a one-year issue where we'd be exceeding that 86 if we ended up doing that with some of these sections. So when people ask, a lot of times they'll say, are you cramming kids into these buildings? Do you have enough space? Yes, we have enough space. Yes, we're within class size guidelines. I think the other thing to understand is we also have space for 4K programming. So this is separate from 4K programming. There's only one scenario that doesn't allow us to have 4K programming in all 4 buildings, and that is the orange scenario with adding an extra section for 5th grade. Otherwise, what we would just do is we would add another section of 4K to another building to be able to accommodate folks. But all the other scenarios, we have the ability to have 4K in each of the elementary schools. And so I just want to make sure that, you know, that everybody understands how that works and what happens. And remember, as you look at the enrollment numbers, this is the high water mark. So, you know, the enrollment continues to tick down. We're going to continue to have more open classrooms as we continue to move through this. And that's just kind of the nature of it. So I'm going to turn it back over to Lance.
Is that the no 4K in orange? Is that also include lab care for any of them?
So the question was the 4K limitation in orange, is that including wrap care? So in the orange scenario, it would just not be 4K at Hudson Prairie. It would still have 4K at the other 3 elementary schools with wrap care. It's the orange one, and it's just the orange scenario, and it's just Hudson Prairie in that situation. And so one of the things that could happen is the board could say, don't pop that section in 5th grade, have the average class size be more like 29, which we currently at Rivercrest have some classes at 29, and then you can have 4K. So it's the orange scenario when you add the extra sections. When you go to this side and you staff it the way we would normally staff our buildings, we do have room for 4K in all of the scenarios. So, yep.
Oh, so this is that QR code I spoke of a moment ago, and you'll also be able to find this on your school's website. So you'll be able to go into this map, put in your address, select the differing options, and then you'll be able to figure out where your address would fall within on the web app in terms of the differing boundary options. However, if you click, I guess you could click on that, hold it in the background, go back in, re-click onto the survey if you're that talented. But again, this will be posted for you as well, so you'll be able to find that information on the school's website. Oh, and at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Danny.
You go back to the last slide. Because I think we're doing good on time, we can leave it here for a few minutes, I think, and have people just log in to that right before we go back to the tab for the poll. So I'm going to leave this QR code up for just a second so that you can get into the actual scenarios, put in an address, actually see those roads And then I'll go into the poll where you'll actually be able to comment on the scenarios. We also have Chromebooks. If you need access to the poll or to the scenarios online, you're not able to get them on your phone, just let us know. We'll get you one as well.
So when you launch into this web app, you'll see this little thing that pops up about ArcGIS. So ArcGIS is the information system that is used nationally, actually internationally, by almost every demographer group, every analysis of school board boundaries, political realignments. If a state has to realign the House of Representatives because they got another representative and that kind of thing, they use ArcGIS. And so you're actually going to be working a little bit in ArcGIS, and then the software that our company uses is on top of ArcGIS is called School Site Locator. I was going to say School Site Profile. School Site Locator. So when the question becomes, well, what's the software? How are you generating? What's the math behind that? It's through ArcGIS, and please go out and Google it. It's really, you can go down a rabbit hole pretty quickly, but it's pretty fascinating what you can do with that software.
So just take another couple minutes to play with that. If you're able to access the poll, and I'll put the poll QR code back on here, but if you're able to access it, that first question is active. It just describes your relationship. If you're a parent, a student, a staff member, community member, or any other stakeholder here today, we just want to make sure that we mark that as some demographic attendance. And again, I'll put that up in just a moment. So here's that QR code for the poll if you need it again. And again, it should just pop you right into that first question. All right, and so we have about 12 questions for you here. After those 12 questions, please feel free to come up to us. We'll be here after for any questions that you have, but please hold those questions until we complete the poll. You'll have opportunities to write open-ended responses for each scenario here as well, and we'll take our time going through this poll so you have, again, those opportunities, but we want to make sure that we get the poll captured so that we can analyze these results as well. There will also be a survey online through the district website that you can also take again. In fact, we encourage you to take again because, again, that's going to be an opportunity for you to comment on the new established orange scenario as well. So multiple ways that you can engage with us today. And I will let this, when I see things slowing down here, I'll start going to the next question. All right, and just another attendance question for you. If you're an employee, where do you work? Again, we like to just analyze some of the things that we're seeing based off of engagement and attendance here. Take a few more seconds for this one. And then our last attendance question is, if you have a child or student that attends a school in the district, which one do they attend? Obviously, if you have multiple students, you can put multiple schools as well. All right, take a few more seconds here. We have about 41% from Willow River. And a good breakdown from other schools as well. All right, so similar to what we asked in the previous polls here, we want to know which priorities of those principles you believe are the most critical in developing these new school boundaries. Choose up to 2, so they are transportation, minimizing impact, natural barriers and major roads, avoiding island zones, neighborhood considerations, and capacity and utilization. Again, if you have taken this before, we do encourage you to do it the same. We know that some things have changed maybe in some of the considerations that you have. So it looks like transportation, capacity utilization have the most right now. A little bit more than 50% are saying transportation. And capacity and utilization are following. Take a few more seconds for this question as well. Again, choose 2 that you believe are the most important for these guiding principles. All right.
The question came up about 4K. I just want to reiterate. So just to clarify, we currently do not have 4K in all of our buildings. That's not been our standard. It's something we're trying to obviously to do, but we don't currently have 4K in all our buildings. And when we added 4K 10 years ago, and Sue can attest to this because she runs 4K programming for us, is we've not had it in the same buildings 2 years in a row. So it moves around. So I don't want people to think that, okay, if we can't get it in all the buildings, that's a big difference compared to what we're used to. Currently, I believe it's in 3 buildings right now, and it changes based on where space is and things like that. So just so people understand, that's kind of the backstory with 4K, because sometimes people have questions about, 4K is a real prominent issue. That's the standard that we have right now is we currently do not have 4K in all of the buildings, and it does move around year to year based on space. So.
All right, for this next question, it is an open word response. If you have multiple words, you can hyphenate them, but please describe what you feel is the most critical issue to be addressed in the development of the boundary scenario. So again, we showed you the last meeting's results of this. You can think of those, again, just give you some reminders. Class size was an important one of those, transportation obviously. So feel free to include those again. If there are other critical issues you believe are important, please make sure to include them here in this question. and I see most of us are familiar with word walls, but the larger the word, the more respondents are actually adding that word. So we see class size, equity, longevity, busing, transportation. All right, take a few more seconds to include your words here. All right. So now moving into the scenario. So after seeing the proposed elementary scenarios, including the scenario, the orange one that we provide today, which do you believe is the best new boundary option? Again, if you don't believe that any of them are, please feel free not to respond. But this is including the orange scenario that we had today for you. A few more seconds here. About 83% saying orange is the best new boundary option. 78. All right. So on the other end of that, after seeing the proposed scenarios, which scenario should be eliminated for new boundary consideration? So obviously you saw that we created orange out of the feedback that we got from purple and a little bit of green. But if there's a scenario that you believe should be absolutely eliminated, make sure to let us know here. So we're seeing about 65% for purple. Take another few seconds to this one. And then for this question, it's a rank scenario. So again, if you don't think any of them will work, please choose to not respond here. But if you had to rank the scenarios in order from most preferred being the top one to least preferred being the bottom one in your list, please do so now, and I'll read those out as they come in. So it looks like orange is in first right now, followed by green, followed by blue, followed by purple. Again, that's orange, then green, then blue, then Take another few seconds to rank these. So for these next few questions, we just want to know if you have any specific concerns about each of the scenarios. So there will be, the next one will be green, I believe, and so on and so forth. Again, just providing some feedback on the biggest concerns that you have with each of the scenarios. And since this is open response, I'll give a few minutes to this one. The deck, sure. Is there a certain slide you wanted to see? Over there. Sorry, I got to get the question back up. All right, you should see that question populate again. And since the slide's up, I'll just read a few of the concerns here since we usually show this. So saying Holton splits unevenly here, some socioeconomic concerns, some issues with class sizes, size and distance concerns, number of students impacted here. Sure. Take a few more seconds for blue and I'll switch over to the next one. So here's the green scenario. Again, what are the biggest concerns you see with green? So just seeing a few comments coming through, some concerns with distance for Hudson Prairie being sent to EP, some impact on busing costs, transportation inefficiencies. So take a few more seconds with green, we'll move on to purple. For this one is the purple scenario. So again, same question here. Biggest concern with the purple scenario that you might have. Take a few more seconds and our last one will be orange. All right, and then lastly, the orange scenario. What is the biggest concern that you see with the new orange scenario that we provide today? And as you wrap up your concerns for Orange, again, just a reminder that there will be a survey online that we do again encourage you to take to spend a little bit more time looking at the online portal. So again, we want to make sure that we're getting as much feedback as we can. And as we wrap up this poll, again, I'll have Lance say some closing remarks, but we will be in the back to answer any other questions or clarify anything else that you might have as we wrap up tonight. This is a live poll, so it'll close when we finish, but then the survey will be exactly the same. It should be open for at least a week. All right, so this is just our final last question. Any questions or additional concerns you might have? Again, I'll turn it over to Lance to close this out.
How long are you going to leave it open?
This for 5 minutes.
All right, well, we very much appreciate you taking the time to come out this evening. We'll leave these comments open, even if we shut down things here in just a few minutes. We'll leave these comments open for a little bit so you can fill into that. Again, kind of that elevator speech, if you'll reach out to some of your friends and neighbors, any of the groups, social groups, church groups that you're affiliated with, and ask them to be looking or going to the school's webpage to participate in the community survey, that'd be great. We really would appreciate that. Thank you, and again, we'll be here for a little bit if you have any further questions.